Ah yes, the guys in the creepy rabbit masks were clearly the victims here. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2021 horror action sequel, The Forever Purge. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. The Forever Purge stars Tenoch Huerta, Ana de la Reguera, and Josh Lucas, and was directed by Everardo Gout. Following the events of the Purge election year, the annual purge is reinstated, and a large portion of the population refuses to stop purging after the morning siren sounds. It's crazy to think that this is actually the 5th Purge movie. Somehow it doesn't feel like there's that many, but there is. The franchise sneakily joined the ranks of so many other annual or biannual horror franchises like Saw or Paranormal Activity, ironically providing audiences with an annual cinematic purge of sorts. For the most part, the Purge movies have been very similar to one another. They had mixed up the perspective and scope a bit from one film to the next, but they've always been ultra-violent social commentary films following a group of people trying to survive Purge Night. It's a simple premise, and certainly repetitive, but I gotta say, I've mildly enjoyed all of the Purge movies. In spite of that, I was a bit hesitant about this one. The major thing that has always intrigued me about this franchise was the premise, the idea of the solitary annual Purge Night. What that means to different people, the social lens through which it could be viewed, the bizarre legality and enforcement of it all, and how such a thing ever came to be. And so the concept of a forever purge was initially kind of disappointing, because without the bounds of Purge Night, it was just gonna be another crime movie. But I will say that in the context of the film, I thought this twist on the premise actually worked. It's different, but honestly seems like the logical progression for the version of society that's presented in the franchise. As you'd probably expect, The Forever Purge is a very topical film. This franchise has always provided thinly veiled socio-political commentary underneath its action, horror, carnage exterior. Across the various films, it's focused on class disparity, political corruption, and the general nature of humanity. The Forever Purge taps into another recent social topic, this time focusing on anti-immigrant sentiment, white supremacists, and general racism. As usual with these films, the thematic messages are presented extremely heavy-handedly. Everything is just super blunt and obvious, with the themes continuously getting thrown in your face. It works, and some of the things they do here are pretty clever and satisfying, but as with all of these films, I can't help but feel a little subtlety could have gone a long way. Even though the premise behind this one gets altered a bit from the usual Purge film, the story itself follows the standard formula, just extended a bit. Rather than following our hero group over the course of a single Purge night, we stick with them as they try to find safety when forever after purgers refuse to stop purging. There are still some ticking clock elements at play here, but something about this one feels less urgent. As ironic as it sounds considering how massive and chaotic the scope of this one is, it somehow feels like it has the lowest stakes of any of the Purge movies. Again, I know that sounds weird, but I think part of it comes from the very reduced horror elements. This is much more of an action thriller than anything else. And I think it also comes from the characters. We follow an interesting mix. Some I really like, some I really dislike, but for the most part, the group is very capable, so there weren't many moments where I actually felt concerned for them. There's plenty of action here to satiate those looking for some car chases, shootouts, and explosive arrows, but I'm not sure big fans of the franchise will be particularly satisfied with this one on that front. Like I mentioned before, the horror elements that usually permeate these films are greatly reduced here. A good chunk of the movie takes place during the day, and even the nighttime scenes are less tense than usual, and littered with some frustrating false jump scares. We get a couple of the trademark creepy masks, and a little bit of Purge night carnage, but this movie feels comparatively tame for a Purge film. The Forever Purge may not be the best film in the franchise, but for a fifth movie that obliterates a major foundational plot point of the series, it was surprisingly okay. Plus, it had some unexpectedly good camera work, including a nice long tracking shot about 3/4 of the way through. This one does have many of the same issues that we'd seen in the preceding films, but it also feels different enough to justify its existence. Supposedly, this is the final Purge film, and it could end here story-wise, but I find it hard to believe we're not going to get a follow-up. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro, as usual with these films, is the premise. I mentioned it before, but the idea of the Purge and Purge Night is just really fascinating to me. Because obviously you can get a lot of exciting action horror out of it, but it also presents some really interesting questions about society. And with the breakdown of the structure that we see in this film, it poses even more questions. I realize that these are certainly not intended to be particularly cerebral films, but as with most dystopian stories, it definitely gets me thinking, and I'm just very intrigued by all of the different facets. On the con side, the biggest issue is how heavy-handed this movie is. The general themes are very admirable. They're just way too overt and on the nose. And by being so obvious and just constantly shoving the messages in our face, it kind of takes away from the impact. Rather than being social commentary cleverly interwoven into the story, it comes across feeling more like bad writing, with a story thrown together around some very blunt themes. It's been the case with nearly every film in this franchise, but it's almost like the movie thinks it's much more profound and has more things to say about its social themes than it actually does. Con number 2 is another holdover con of this franchise, and that's the dumb character decisions. I'll admit that the characters are slightly less dumb than usual, but the movie's still riddled with those yell-at-the-screen moments of idiocy. Characters walking into very obvious traps, people letting their guard down at the most ridiculous times, everybody always waiting to the last minute to do anything. These kind of dumb decisions are expected in a franchise like this, but it's still frustrating when you're watching. At least the characters here are a bit more capable than usual. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying The Forever Purge or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give The Forever Purge 3 out of 5 paws. It's a low 3 for me, but it's just about on par with all of the other films in the franchise, delivering an interesting concept, some lackluster writing, and some decent action. I would recommend The Forever Purge to people looking for a bloody action thriller. It's nothing overly special, but if you want a fairly mindless, violent action movie that thinks it's not mindless, then this will certainly get the job done. I think existing fans of the Purge franchise may be a bit torn on this one. It's an interesting continuation of the storyline from the third film, but fans of Purge Night Carnage may be a bit disappointed by the type of action here. If you liked The Forever Purge, I would recommend The Purge Election Year. It's the third film in the series, and acts as the immediate story predecessor to this one, setting up much of the political strife that carries over here. If you liked seeing a slightly different take on the Purge formula, you might want to check out The First Purge. The one called The First Purge, not the actual First Purge movie. The First Purge is the fourth film in the series, and is a prequel that shows the instigation of Purge Night. And if you want to step away from the action thriller side of this, but are interested in another story about immigration and the border, you should check out Identifying Features. It's a Mexican drama that focuses on the harrowing tale of a mother trying to find her son. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen The Forever Purge? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie that focuses on immigrant characters? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or add it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies. The way life should be.